Hello, listeners, and welcome to the latest episode of the AdQuick Madvertising podcast, a podcast that explores the intersection of content, creativity, tech, all of the things that you care about. Today, we have a special guest. We have Gregory Kennedy. He's returning to the show once again. He's a 20-year Silicon Valley veteran. He's a 3X head of marketing, a former award-winning creative director. Today, he runs Vibe Your SaaS, which is one of the better newsletters in the B2B marketing space. He's also probably one of the only marketers that when I follow on social that's like consistently good and not cringe. I love my cringe marketer friends. Gregory is always, very genuine. He's just so good at the internet in addition to being an executive, which is kind of a rare thing, right? Like most executives aren't like that. Anyway, we're lucky to have him back on the show. Gregory, welcome back.
Hey, that was a nice intro. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm gonna just claim right here. I'm the original meme lord. Like I've been doing that internet stuff, like whatever. I don't know what that is. Internet cultural stuff since like 96 or something, like a long time.
Yeah, it's really authentic. And I feel like a lot of, not to do the old person kids these days thing, but there's this kind of meme in Gen Z where they're afraid to express themselves and they think being authentic is cringe and they have to wrap everything in a few layers of irony. And I feel like that's such a toxic way to live. I don't know how we help our Gen Z friends get a little bit more, genuineness in their lives to where they don't have to be afraid to share their hobbies or interests. And I feel like maybe we kind of did this to them by having an environment where like they go to a party and everything is recorded, right? So they're like afraid that everything is part of the digital panopticon. And I feel like we're doing damage to our young people a little bit there.
That's an interesting perspective. I mean, I've always been a huge fan of irony, and like sometimes I'm at this point in my life where like I've wrapped myself in so much irony and sarcasm that I like to be in this place where I sometimes don't know if I'm serious or not. That's like my happy place. Like, is it a joke or is it not a joke? Does it matter if it's a joke? It's like I kind of enjoy that. But I think what you're talking about is more along the lines of like this fear of being recorded.
Yeah.
And so that part is really different than how I grew up. And like there were a lot of dumb things I did when I was younger that like I'm glad there's not like video of, for sure.
Same. So the last time we had you on, we talked about a lot of things. Of course, we talked about AI because I talk about AI with all of my guests, but a lot has changed in the time since then. So I want to get your take on, because you talk to a lot of marketers, where are marketers at with AI? Is there still like this range of people who are skeptical and people who think it's useless, and then kind of the early adopters who try it with everything? Or has it become known and accepted now that, hey, AI is a useful part of everyone's marketing technology stack, and that's just something that's going to be known?
This is a really good question. I think we're at a really interesting place right now when it comes to the use of AI in marketing. There's a recognition now that AI is basically used in the creation of all marketing materials. And the reaction from people, I think, is quite, maybe it's obvious ultimately that like, I get all the time now, like, this is AI. Like, it's almost like the go-to insult if someone doesn't like anything that you have posted. Like I posted a screen capture of my analytics recently that had some impressive numbers that I thought they were impressive. And the first response, like, nice AI generated analytics page or whatever. It was so funny. Like, I just thought it was just such a ridiculous answer. I literally was in the comments telling other people to tell this guy that like, it's real. Like, I didn't even want to say it myself because I was like, look, dude, are you new here? So I think that whole part is like created this very interesting dynamic in the marketing world, and people responding in a way that like, that I anticipated about a year ago. So people responding now with doing extreme things to prove that they're not AI, right? Like overly casual language and lots of colloquialisms and idioms or other types of things, right? Which is exactly what I saw a year ago. In fact, like it was the inspiration for calling my new brand Vibe Your SaaS. Because like I saw that like AI and all this technology was going to be able to create what I would call traditional, let's call it like legacy or traditional professional marketing with ease. And it was going to be perfect. And that was no longer an advantage. And so my response is like, oh, just go very casual, go very colloquial, go very, I suppose, authentic, and just be like the real me and tap way into that. And I feel like a lot of people are starting to see that now, that like, that's the only way to like demonstrate very publicly that what you're doing is, I would say, perhaps not AI generated or doesn't have the fingerprints of AI on it. So it's an interesting time. Like I would also say something like, I use AI all the time. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with using it. I don't feel so strongly as other people do, who are like, they're so angry about it and they don't like it. I think like if it creates the content that you need, it's totally fine to use. I cringe a little bit at some of the like AI language perhaps, but even that, like, I don't really care all that much, particularly like if it's something that's very basic, I don't know, like terms of service or some kind of like marketing materials that I don't think require like a lot of poetry to create. Like, why not use AI? Like, I think you're a fool for putting so much effort into things that are maybe not so consequential.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I was thinking when you were talking, in addition to, maybe some thought leaders just using AI for things or trying overly hard to seem like they're not using AI. One thing I've noted is it seems like there's a lot of, or maybe just a handful of 20 somethings that are building startups to quote unquote automate your CMO. And you find out, you look at what it does and it's like, oh, it leaves Reddit comments, right? It's like, it's nothing at all what a CMO does. And it's actually, it's really interesting though, because the more that I look at this, it's like, these young sort of MarTech ad techs that get funded are clearly have people with no marketing background. They like kind of look at marketing from first principles, which could be great. Like, you could come up with something really well that way. But on the other hand, they might be all zeros because the MarTech and ad tech space has so many startups, and it's not a dead sector because there's still innovation. Obviously, we're reinventing out of home, but there's just so many startups working on various parts of MarTech and AdTech that I almost feel like if you're going to do a startup that's going to win, you kind of have to have gone through the ringer and worked at a company and played with the MarTech stack and interfaced with the team to really build something that's going to get traction in B2B. So I don't know. Do you think that founders in AdTech and MarTech should have experience first, or can they approach it from first principles and build the CMO in a box, having never done marketing? How do you think that plays out?
That's an interesting question. I mean, we've seen both sides of this, right? Like, so Google, I think, was very successful and brought a lot of things to the ad market that were unique because they did not have a background in advertising. So there's clearly examples where it was healthy, and they brought in a lot of terminology and things too that weren't common before. Supply and demand was like not a term that people in advertising used until Google. I remember working at a big agency. We were like offended by that. We're like, these are like finance terms. These are not advertising terms. But like, they revolutionized marketing and did a whole bunch of really interesting things. There's a whole school of thought that to really have a breakthrough product as a startup, that it requires people to be outsiders and come from first principles to revolutionize the industry. So that's certainly a perspective. And I think there's examples of that. But I think what you're talking about is there's perhaps more examples of people that could build a great company, could maybe build even a VC-backed company, and they might be more successful if they had more knowledge and were more aware of how the industry worked that they're trying to be in. I mean, that's generally what I think of like ad tech and MarTech startups. I think it's a great irony that people in Silicon Valley like hate advertising, run ad blockers, have no interest in it at all, like, and then want to monetize through that. Like, I find that to be quite curious. Maybe that's a little bit different than coming at it with first principles. But I think like if you want to revolutionize a business, like trying to understand how it works and maybe even be like a consumer of the product would be helpful.
I actually really love the TBPN guys. We sponsor them. You know, we've
Oh
been
yeah.
an early sponsor of them because they're so vocally pro advertisement on the show. And they basically talk about how advertising has funded so many great things that people enjoy. And it's like, it's kind of a luxury belief to hate ads because not everyone has enough money to afford to pay for every single online service they use. So the fact ads subsidize everything from search to social networking and Facebook to, you know, just content and news. You kind of have to, you kind of have to have like a sort of, yeah, a luxury beliefs view of the world where, oh, these things are bad and, oh, you know, like they shouldn't exist. And it's just, it's kind of childish. It's not really how the world works.
I agree 100%. I think the ads that people like too are few and far between. The ones that are like these really entertaining brand ads that people love. Like if you ever pay attention to the vast majority of advertising that's always been out there, it's usually pretty direct response type of stuff that doesn't necessarily get a lot of effort or emphasis put into the entertainment value of it, right? Because that's what they're paying for. They wanted to perform, and I think that's fine. And I agree 100% that like the ad supported model is fantastic. I actually had really in depth research on this at one point. There are cultural differences, so people in the United States will not pay. They just won't. They like ad supported is by far the most popular approach. Where in Europe there actually is a higher propensity to pay. There's other research too that shows that like in general, European markets will pay more for quality as well. So there are some differences in how people, I think, culturally view these things, which is maybe important. That the US is very ad driven and our tolerance for advertising is pretty high because we just have a much stronger desire to get products that are, at least from the consumer perspective, free.
Yeah, totally. And I think ads are even part of the culture here. You know, people watch the Super Bowl as much for the ads as the game. You know, you don't have to like football, but you can love culture and enjoy all the ads. I think the Super Bowl ads, by the way, I think can be better. I think we need to have a bit of a renaissance there. So
Yeah, I agree.
I wrote down some more notes. I'm actually really bullish for robotics for the next few years, and I've actually been I've been following the space of robot lawnmowers, and it's
Mm,
interesting because it's a space that was terrible, like even just 3 or 4 years ago, and recently the new lidar ones actually work. Like they can mow your whole property. It's all automated, and like the more I follow this, the more I think about our work and what happens if we automate all of the lower ends of the marketing sector. Like, you know, do you really need a junior
mm.
analyst anymore when you have AI, which is already, you know, able to process data and come up with simple reports? So I guess my question to you is, you know, you've thought about AI and automating our work. How do you think this plays out for young people just trying to get into the field? Do companies have to start treating them as like apprentices almost and nurturing them into senior talent? Because I feel like, you know, why are teams, if the AI is really good at doing these basic things that a young person was trained on, how should companies think about it to justify hiring of young people? Because we can't just leave, you know, we can't just let people into the marketing sector and expect them out of college to be really good and able to do senior work. They have to start somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, when it comes to jobs and AI, I just posted this just now. So I wrote, what's remarkable about AI guru doomer predictions is that they all agree on the time frame that we're 18 months away from 50% of jobs disappearing. But they've been saying this since 2017. And I included a screen capture about truck driving jobs going away, which is almost 10 years ago. And like all the truck driving jobs have not gone away. We're very, very far from all the truck driving jobs going away, right? So I just think that all the stuff about all the jobs going away is not true. On the other hand, there is a lot of things that are being automated. And I know personally, like people whose businesses have been affected by AI. I gave this example the other day, like friend of a family friend, and they had some kind of like Chinese translation typesetting graphic design business that is just not viable anymore. It's just easy for everybody to go in and translate and get what they need and just kind of roll with it. They don't need to pay someone to do that anymore. So I think it's a good example where someone on the margins, like a kind of small local business, has been totally impacted. Like there's just not that happen. No one's paying for that anywhere. So that is a reality. I think your more specific point around junior people and how do we foster and grow them, I think that's always been a question. I was actually just thinking about that this morning. Like when I had interns at one point, I had a bunch of interns, like I didn't even really know what to do with them. I would sign them things like go and organize a software library, which we don't really need to do anymore. So it's an open question. I don't think all the jobs will go away. I think companies will be forced to like hire and recruit and train people. And we should think more about it from that perspective. I guess at the high level, that's my answer. I think it'll evolve. But in advertising, we could have like automated a lot more jobs years ago. So that was something we should talk about. A bunch of different ad tech companies I worked at was like there were aspects of the platform that we could automate, but we chose not to because customers and people wanted to be more hands-on with the tool. So that debate has been going on the product side for a lot of tools for a long time. So it's nothing new. I just think that like we'll come out the other side of this and there'll be ideas and there'll be cultural norms about what's appropriate and what's not, like when it comes to hiring junior people and interns and all of that. We're just in this like very extreme transition period, which reminds me very much of like the 90s. So when I first came up through the .com boom, there was a moment where like everything was kind of turned on its head and people only wanted to hire young people. And there was just this perception that everything was kind of collapsing and changing. And there were a lot of hybrid roles, what you're seeing now. Like I was one of those people where it's like I wrote code and I did design and I like did other stuff and I just kind of did everything, right? And you see that a return to that kind of like idea, like, hey, we want to have these like GTM engineers in our startups that can like sit in Claude code all day and do all kinds of cool stuff. And we haven't experienced yet like this transition to where all these new roles emerge and then specialization happens. And then it becomes more defined. Cause I remember the day of that conversation with me and they're like, Gregory, you have to choose. Are you going to write code or are you going to be on the design team? And I remember like thinking this really deeply. And I was like, well, I'm going to be on the design team because I just think I have more of an aptitude for that than I do for writing code. Maybe I made a wrong choice.
No, I think you made the right choice. So let's talk about some things you've written online. I took notes. I read your posts online anyway, but I took some notes on things that I thought would be useful for the podcast audience. So we'll start with the not controversial one, and then we'll go to the controversial one. So I think this is useful. We have a lot of young founders who do listen to this show. So I think it would be really useful for them to hear about founder-led GTM, which is something you write a lot about in your newsletter. And so, what does that look like for a, young founder who doesn't have a big team and how should they think about, going to market with their new product, whatever it is?
Yeah, super interesting. Like I have used this term and there's a lot of people that I deal with like in San Francisco and Silicon Valley who've been very pro like founder-led sales, founder-led marketing, founder-led GTM. And I had a lot of conversation recently and I came to the realization that it perhaps wasn't as obvious as I thought that this was what I think is the appropriate way for like early stage startup to work, right? So the philosophy or the theory or the idea is that like in early stage, like, okay, maybe you're bootstrapped, you haven't raised any money, maybe you've raised some money, maybe you're even in Series A, but in that early stage of the company, what I believe really deeply is that the founder needs to lead when it comes to GTM. They need to be on sales calls. They need to be posting content. They really need to take the initiative to be the voice, to be the brand. Customers want to deal with these people. They want to deal with the founder. And the founder could just make decisions and just provide a level of like authenticity and authority that a head of sales or a head of marketing or whatever it is can't, particularly in the early stage. And what's important is things need to move really quickly. So if you're in a meeting with a customer and the founder's there, and they need some change, or they have some questions about how the technology works, the founder can just make that call or that change or agree to whatever it is that they want to agree, like in the call, and they will be the most qualified person to do it, right? There's none of this like, let me go check and see if we can accommodate that and then come back to you and stuff, right? If you have the founder in the meeting, they can like just facilitate and move things along really quickly, right? And so that's why I've like pushed this concept of founder-led GTM. I think they would need to be like posting content, conducting meetings, being on podcasts, webinars, video, whatever it is that works for them. But they need to be front and center and take responsibility for it. And then I guess the idea, or what I really push, is that as the company grows, as there's more success, the founder needs to build capabilities and put resources around them that can slowly not remove their responsibility, but like amplify what they do, right? So a lot of time there's this desire, and there's old school like investors, venture capitalists, people who push really hard for founders, just like hire a head of sales and have them take control of that, which I don't agree with at all. I think what you want to do is get junior people who you like, maybe one of these GTM engineering guys who is just super excited about technology and your product and can wear a lot of hats. And they sit in the meeting with you and they just slowly take on more and more responsibility and do all the things around the edges that you don't actually need to do as the founder. You know, there's obvious secretarial or operational things like write follow-ups and maybe put together the proposal and take notes and monitor the day-to-day, right? Those types of things. Like just get someone who can like take all of that, but the founder needs to be there in the meeting and be present and understand what's going on. And in my experience, if you do this right, there's a day where like it just becomes really obvious that the founder isn't necessarily required anymore, or not at the same level that they once were. And that's the goal, right? It's like, how do you get to that place? And then you just have the founder, in my opinion, just present and take part in all of the really essential large customer type of relationships, pitches, that type of thing. And they can spend a little bit more time on the product, but you don't also want to ever get out of the loop of that, right? Because spending time with customers, talking to them, understanding their pain points and problems, it's what's going to help them develop a fantastic product that solves all those pain points that you're hearing about all day long.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's the right consult. And if you look at even now at some of the biggest companies in the world, everyone from, Sam Altman at OpenAI is actively, talking about the product and talking to users. Elon Musk, responds to people who have feedback of X or Tesla. It's like, it's so different than, it's not like growing up, we saw like, the CEO of Procter and Gamble talking to people. It's becoming more normalized now, even at big companies. But I think as you're growing, the founder still being there and present is super important. And I think it's like, it's so emblematic of a startup that you want to do business with, because they're clearly really passionate about what they're working on. And that's kind of like you'll always take a meeting with them, right? If you're a young founder, you have a new B2B tool, and like, you're in the meeting, like you want to talk to your prospective buyer, you want to learn more from them, you want to engage with them and make them feel special about being an early user. And, they'll be more on board to help you out, because people want to try new services. They want to try new products, especially if there's that passion, they really care. And it's not just like some automated AI tool replying to you, right? It's clearly a human, because there's use of AI, but probably not there. So let's talk about something more not controversial, just funnier. You have said before and said pretty bluntly that LinkedIn can feel cringe, but avoiding it is only hurting yourself. So do you want to talk about what you meant by that and what separates people who do it well from people who might be cringe?
This is a great topic, because like I actually have a big following on LinkedIn. I mean, I love X and I'm on X all the time. And on X, it's almost like backstage, the back room, and everyone loves to like hate on LinkedIn, which is funny. It deserves it. Like this morning I was saying like, dude, what is up with that open to work thing? What graphic? I don't know what it is. Like, who thought that is a good idea over at LinkedIn? Like, it's such an obvious, like, at least in America, cultural taboo that like I can't believe they codified it in the product. Like it just makes no sense at all. Like, did they do any research or customer like interviews regarding this thing? Anyway, I think for me, it's a good example of like something I find to be really cringe when it comes to LinkedIn. So you have these people on the extreme end of that who are like on X, like don't ever want to be on LinkedIn. Like pretty confident, like Mark Andreessen doesn't have a profile on there. I've tried to find him and tag him. I mean, it's obvious he doesn't want to be on like the Microsoft application. Like I get it. But I think that that's the wrong approach for most people. Like LinkedIn is a great product. It has like an up-to-date database of basically every business person in the world. And I've gotten a lot of value and continue to get a lot of value out of it. And a lot of like my customers get a lot of value out of it as well. Right. So I think that like maybe you're frustrated with it, or you don't like it, or it's cringy. Like that's all true. But you just have to kind of find a way to manage that. I mean, my attitude is like I post a lot of jokes on there and memes and stuff. And, you know, like maybe some people don't think it's appropriate or whatever, but that only just motivates me to do it even more.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And I do think I do think for a salesperson or an HR person, there's an obvious use of LinkedIn. I think
totally for HR recruiting, like it's an excellent tool. I mean, that's the core. I mean, so okay, I'm so glad you brought that up because like that's the core audience and product of LinkedIn, and I think that's the culture of LinkedIn, and that's why for like a
that's why they have to open the work thing. They don't understand
exactly.
They don't understand the cultural dynamics about what it means to display that in America. You know, a lot of people have pointed that out. It's like negative signaling a little bit.
Exactly. So and they had that business. Like that's a fantastic business. Like they make a fortune with that, right? So LinkedIn is like we could do a whole podcast on just LinkedIn. Like that they've got like 10 or 7 different areas of like let's call them lines of business that ultimately conflict with each other. So there's always this like tension between like, oh, is this about recruiting? Is this about networking? Like I take the attitude, like I want to connect with as many people as possible, reach as many people as possible, post as much stuff as possible. But then there's other people who don't agree with that. They're like, oh, you should just have like a network of just like your close contacts. And you shouldn't be like connection maxing. You should be taking a different approach, right? And they've got like games on there. I don't understand that one at all, where it's like, you get that alert that's like Adam just played whatever.
They're really... What? They're similar to Facebook. Like they copy paste things that were successful on Facebook, like Facebook, although it's Facebook, you know, mobile games and Farmville and whatever. LinkedIn's like, oh, we should copy those features too. Similar to how Instagram copies TikTok, and you know, their PMs definitely use the other products, and they're like, hey, we should try this out. We'll hit our engagement goals.
Yeah, so that's the ad business, right? Which is to some degree in like contention with or creates tension with the like the recruiting product because they want you to be on there as much as possible so they can show you as many.
It almost doesn't matter what they do to get you to log back in and update.
That's exactly that. It's like, oh, can we get people to play? The other thing with the games one is like when I thought of it is like, okay, so I can see from my activity. So I'm on there all the time, just like you, like all the time. But I can tell when someone got laid off because all of a sudden it's some person I haven't spoken to in a very long time. They start commenting on all my posts, right? There's nothing wrong with that too. Like I'm not saying anything wrong, but it's just the obvious behavior. Like you go on there, you look for a job, you're kind of bored or you have free time. You're like, oh, Gregory, that's cool. Let me comment on this. Then, oh, let me play a game, right? Like I get the logic of that, but that's what I meant. Like the platform just has like all these kind of competing, like they're almost like competing lines of business, right? All built in one product. I mean, it's a testament to just how amazing of a product it is ultimately.
Well, Gregory, it was great to talk to you today. We'll put some links to subscribe to your newsletter so people can get your ongoing thoughts. But tell us where to connect with you for people who are just listening. Tell us where to find you online.
Yeah, I mean, go to vibeyoursas.com. Everything should be linked from there. You can follow me on X. I finally got Gregory Kennedy at X. I'm very excited about that. I had some other handle before, but they opened all those up. So that's fantastic. And then I'm Gregory Kennedy on LinkedIn. So yeah, find me online.
Awesome. We're big fans of Gregory, so please connect with him, and we will see you all for a new episode next week.